Joining me in studio is well-known Durban attorney Theasen Pillay from TPA Legal. Theasen, welcome to African Essence.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Theasen, the virus continues to create turmoil, right? And this is globally. And with that comes financial stress on many. This has affected everybody's lives financially. What are the options for those with regard to bonds that are in arrears, right? The basic necessities that they have, which is daily living to survive. Aside from that, accounts, debit orders.
At the start of the lockdown, we had all the financial institutions affording various options that their consumers could take action and implement. But as things progressed, we then heard a lot of consumers saying they've applied, but there have been resistance. Either they've been advised that it doesn't apply to them because there's certain qualifying criteria that they don't meet. So although there's these payment plan options, many people can't actually take advantage of them by virtue of either being in default before, or being in arrears, or simply not being able to pay what is required of them as stipulated by the bank. Now, debt counseling is where their credit accounts, the payment for those accounts are reduced between 40 and 60% immediately. There's immediate relief. And through the debt counseling process, your assets are secured, you have peace of mind. Your roof is not going to be taken away. But above all, it gives you that breathing space. It gives you that temporary space to know that it's going to be fine. In a time where things are so uncertain, debt counseling gives you that certainty.
Theasen, for the less fortunate and for those who are already unemployed, right? Going forward, how do you think COVID-19 is going to affect them even further? But besides that, what about those that have lost employment now during lockdown and due to COVID-19? What are their options and what advice can you give them with regard to UIF?
I think the unfortunate reality of this entire situation is that more people are very fearful of starving than they are of COVID-19. And that is the simple reality.
What is the time frame of one receiving UIF once a company has applied?
From my own company's experience and from those that I've engaged with, there is no time period that you can commit to. We've also put claims through that have not in fact been paid as yet. So there is no definitive date by which once a claim is lodged, you are going to be paid by.
Theasen, a very important question, this one here, which has affected the arts industry, sports. Now, we know there are contracts in place between service providers and clients. So some clients have already paid upfront for a booking. What is the legalities here between a service provider and a client?
Actually, what you're referring to applies pretty much across the board. We have a principle in law called force majeure. In a nutshell, it's simply the impossibility to perform. If there is a circumstance which objectively makes it almost impossible for a party to comply with their contractual obligations, be it a contract in writing or a verbal. In other words, this is not a clause that is limited specifically to a written document. It's a common law principle and accordingly applies to everybody. Then, under those circumstances, they can be exonerated from not complying. People are prevented from working or from operating a business, and they would have had commitments. There are still commitments that ensue whether they are in operation or not. And as a consequence of that, it would be pleaded that their inability to perform what they said they would is no fault of their own. Hence, we could very well see that this application of this principle to be used quite frequently.
Theasen, let's talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the economy and where to from here.
Unfortunately, when the dust settles, the reality is you're going to have a lot of defaults, a lot of promises that have not been fulfilled, and as a consequence, people are going to take action. So be it an unpaid debt, in business, rentals, it's just going to be exacerbated. And realistically, I think it wouldn't be a far-fetched expectation that this would probably be the highest number of claims that are going to be lodged, not just in South Africa but globally, because people would be trying to enforce their rights as fast as possible. My advice to people who find themselves about to litigate or embroiled in litigation is ensure that you get competent legal advice, because there could be a legal principle that could best advance your case that you are unaware of. Litigation is extremely costly, not from a financial aspect alone. I'm talking about the actual consequences. Sometimes you can't recover from it. So you want to avoid a losing result.
An important question, Theasen, I think, is rental. And this is a big one because it's with regard to businesses, it's with regard to people that are renting homes, flats. What happens there when they don't have the money to pay their rent? Can they be evicted by the landlords?
Residential tenants get afforded a lot more protection. So let me start with that. During the lockdown period, evictions cannot be effected. Well, by that I mean lawful evictions. Once lockdown ends, you're likely to have a situation where a tenant may be still in arrears and litigation may be imminent. In that instance, you have various specific provisions that can apply. It's called the Prevention of Illegal Eviction Act.
Okay.
Now, when this starts, my advice to anyone that is a defaulting tenant is at that time, you absolutely have to see a competent tenant to assist you in that process, because you do not want to risk your home. You don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
The situation with commercial tenants is slightly different. Yes, you can raise certain defenses like it's an act of God, I can't perform, etc. But with commercial, you must understand that the latitudes, the indulgences, and the actual protections that are afforded to residential don't readily apply. So you want to ensure that if it had to reach that stage, one, you have put forth a great defense, but ideally litigation should be avoided in those matters, because at this point you like, although ideal as it is, you want the landlord and tenant to try and compromise, to sit and say, what is the best solution? How do we work for it? Because remember, at some point in time, especially if you have a property that is in a prime location, that lease is going to expire. To renew that lease, you need your landlord to consent to that.
Thank you for that.